All right, let's reopen.
Time is it?
I'd kill for
You ready?
coffee.
Does Ryan and Waldauer ever show up?
Okay. All right, we're back. Next application, please.
Next application is Reen and Mulderry, 80 Post Crossing.
It's the applicant present.
There's nothing new in the file.
We sent them a letter saying,
I don't know what, I thought they got a letter sent to them
They
saying.
did.
You
So, motion to remove from our agenda, or move from our
Strike
agenda
from the
without
agenda without
prejudice?
prejudice.
Okay. Motion would be to remove the application of 80 Post Crossing without prejudice from our
I
agenda.
make a motion that we remove the application at 80 Post Crossing of Rain and Mulberry from our
Second.
agenda.
Without prejudice.
Without prejudice.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, it's still adjourned until September 11th, and a letter was sent to, just to advise to read notice and read mail on the application because it's been so long. Next application, please.
Next application is 79 Main Street, LLC.
Good evening, Jason Paremba, Jason Thomas Architect. Do you guys have all mini copies of
I'm going to
the?
get into us now.
Okay, great.
Just revisions to the original plan?
No revisions.
Zach, you did.
Zach did a
I
report.
did, but it's in the file.
Okay.
I'll
You
have
wanted to
paraphrase
review the
it.
site, right?
Yes, I did.
Copy of Zach's report.
Yes.
Did he have it?
All right, so let's get that, let's just move that around. So this is report if you want to. All right, so, okay, I did a kind of a brief report on this. This is 79 Main Street. It's a contributing resource in the Southampton Village Historic District. And very brief history that appears in the inventory form that was done in 1979 identifies this as the, having been the private residence of a D.C. Gardner, that according to a map of 1902. And then by 1916, it's identified as a commercial structure, the Schultz Brothers Bakery. This is E. Belcher Hyde's Atlas of Suffolk County, Ocean Shore, Volume 2. So evidently, this building represents that transition along Main Street from private residential to commercial, which was occurring in the late 19th century into the early decades of the 20th century. And so what's especially interesting about it is that the building still retains very distinctive architectural elements that are indicative of both stages. In other words, if you stand back across the street and look at it, you can still appreciate it as having originated as a private dwelling. But then, of course, the street level has been converted with commercial shop front, which in 1979, at least, was regarded as being original to the conversion to commercial use, would put it circa 1910 to 15. In any event, whether that's accurate or not, it's certainly been there a good long time. And the building was included as a contributing resource in that inventory and then in the historic district itself because it possesses these architectural characteristics of both the dwelling and the commercial store. Now, one of the elements that I think is important here is that unlike some of the structures, whether they were pre-existing or introduced at a later date along that commercial, along Main Street, which touch each other, because it tends to be the characteristic in a commercial district in which one can occupy the entire footprint of the lot, that the buildings are contiguous to one another. In this case, one of the interesting architectural pieces is that this house remains freestanding along its south side, and you can still appreciate that. And that's one of the characteristics that enables you to see it as the private dwelling that it was to begin with, rather than a structure built purposefully to occupy the entire footprint of the lot, which is what one tends to do in a commercial area. And so basically my feeling was that, you can't see it in this, but if we could see the south elevation, there we go. Clearly, the architectural approach to this has been very much within the board's guidelines in terms of reproducing existing historical elements to minimize on the visual impact of what's proposed. It's also noteworthy to see that the entire proposal is very much limited to the first floor. So again, you're not looking at a kind of a massive extension or addition to a pre-existing house or building. So in that respect, it's appropriate in its approach. My concern, however, is with this front portion of the proposed addition, which is the portion that you will see.
Let me switch back. That's the alley there.
Okay, right.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what you can see from the street. What's difficult to make out, which is why we were looking at that other sheet, is that there's a section of the existing building which is a full 2 stories high, and part of what's proposed is situated behind that existing part of the building. So in other words, the rear portion of what's proposed on that facade would not be seen from the street and would therefore not visually impact what is truly to be appreciated, which is not only the space between this building and the adjoining structure, but also the base of this oriel, this 2-story corner tower, which springs from that lower level, kind of a wonderful residential feature, and also the entryway to this 2-story extension. So I feel that while what's proposed emulates the design of the front, where it kind of departs from your guidelines would be
What you're referring to, that side, the side porch, and then the...
So this is the element that's going to obscure the existing architecture, I feel, in a negative way. What is proposed toward the back, behind this existing extension, and around the back, which doesn't retain any great architectural, quality as the front does, appears to be perfectly acceptable. So that's...
I agree with a lot of your points. We were actually quite sympathetic, like you said, about not extending the building to the 75 Main property.
Right.
We were very sensitive to that. We tried to mimic, a lot of the details that already exist on site.
Yeah.
The fear was, we considered extending this porch roof all the way forward, but I think that would be a big mistake in starting to compete with the front facade. So that's why we kept this to this sort of 1-story height. And so as you see, we're mimicking the details that wrap it. I'm not sure sort of volume-wise, as you in plan, this is set back to the facade of the front doors. I'm not exactly sure an alternative to preserving, I know exactly what you're talking about, that sort of curves down on the lower facade there, how to preserve that with the kind of requirements that my client had needed for certain things, without taking that way back. It's significant in plan. It's...
Well, I'm just saying that, that I'm not familiar with what
Understood.
the owner or client's programmatic needs are. I'm looking at the aesthetics of the architecture that's proposed and what that impact is visually and aesthetically. So I understand if you're trying to address,
Just a little.
use of the building, et cetera, but I feel that preserving this aspect of the existing structure is a significant objective.
So the alleyway is kind of a bit of a problem. At the rear of the property, with the addition in the rear, seems to be more in keeping it's not out of any right of way, but however, it's so obscured in the rear that it has no really negative
It
impact.
literally sits behind what is already built there.
Exactly.
It sits behind that 2-story. And it doesn't prevent people from accessing along. And whether people can get from the front or the back of the building is not so much the issue. But visually, from the front looking, you still retain the space between the 2 buildings.
Okay.
And you also, by not building this portion at the front, you also retain the architectural elements that are there that are characteristic of the original building.
Understood.
Understand.
Okay. Board members, comments? Jeff, I know you brought that up at the last meeting. And
I agree with Zach's proposal.
Okay. Same?
Yeah.
Appropriate. See what you can come up with.
It seems to be more, you understood the comments. I don't know if you have a copy of Zach's report. Maybe you have a copy and take a copy with you. You can give him that.
File?
can give
You can
me
get
one
that
of
copy,
them,
that's our spare. Oh, that's someone's.
You can give that one.
No, someone,
I
did you write
saw
notes?
that.
Did you
Love
write notes in the back?
Oh, I might have written a note.
Are they appropriate?
Private.
Don't know.
Okay, maybe you want to give them.
May I see it?
I have a question, just in the essence of time.
Yes.
Would the board ever be willing to approve, let's say, the rear portion of this proposal only?
Yes, as soon
You
as you
get
show
going-
us, as soon as you show us the design that shows just the rear portion only.
Okay, fair.
Any other comments? Is there any public comment on the application? Yeah, that's just for completion of the file, so
Understood.
that there is no question, there's no issues, there wouldn't be no misinterpretation of what is being approved. All right. So you'll have that prepared at the next meeting?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. You're asking the board to just adjourn so you can prepare yourself for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until our next meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the applicant at 79 Main Street, request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And last historic application for the evening.
David C. Bonnet Living Trust. Do you have small plans?
Yes, yes. I'm Scott Baker, the architect, 20 Atlantic Avenue, South New York. You'll notice that there's, it was designed in sort of a French Normandish style, so it's a stucco house with cedar shingles. There's a very odd sort of octagonal addition that pokes up.
You would have to put it on the table so
Oh, I'm sorry.
the camera can pick it up.
There's sort of an odd octagonal addition in the rear. The main fireplace in the house is in the living room, right where you would look at the water, so it obscures the water view. And the garage has the best view of the water. That kitchen has no view of the water. So the owner, David Burnett, likes the house and wants to improve upon it. So we're proposing to not tear it down, as most people might do, but to basically add on to it, not really tear anything down, but just to sort of add on areas to it. So I colored in the landscape plan to give you a better idea of the areas that we're adding to. So as you approach the house in the front, there would be a new motor court where there is a motor court, and sort of a new entrance terrace. But then there's a new addition to give a better scale to the sort of center bay window. So that's one addition that's happening. The other addition is on the rear of the house where that odd octagonal addition is. We'd be removing that and adding on sort of a bay element there, and going back to more of the hip-to-gable vocabulary that's around the rest of the house. The most notable addition is on the north end of the house, which is a garage, which is on the street side of the house, and then a screen porch, which is on the water side, and then some addition between the two, some additions to add on to the area where the kitchen is. So the house needed no variances except wetland setback variances. So we worked very closely with the consultant, Chick Voorhees, and amended it a few times to get it to meet their approval, and they were very happy with it in the end. We didn't do anything that approached any closer to the water than the house already exists. We've proposing adding to the buffer zone. So we've tried to be and we're putting in a new septic system, which is much farther away from the water than the current system. So we've tried to do some things in that regard to be sympathetic to the lake. The other aspect of the project is to take and put in a new swimming pool, which moves it farther from the south property line and a little bit toward the street, so it's now compliant with the current zoning. So, and as I said, we need no setbacks, no pyramid, or any of that. So in terms of the plan, the existing house is here, and this is a new three-car garage there with sort of a drive-through. This is that area where there's that new bay. We have the new bay on the water side here off that octagonal structure, and then our screen porch down at this end. If you look at the elevations, I gave you, I didn't give those to you yet. Sorry. So I included in a set of drawings that were prepared for the zoning board just because I thought that they gave a good visual image of where we're adding on. So everything in these drawings is shaded in gray are areas that are new. So on the front elevation, you can see that we're adding on this bay window here, which, if you look at the existing front photographs, tries to bring it more into scale. I lost my front photograph. To scale with the massing of the house. On the north end is the end of the garage addition, which mimics the form of the existing vocabulary of the house. What we've done is stepped down the ridge so that it's not as high as the ridges of the existing house. This is the south elevation view. The south end doesn't change at all. This is the south view of the garage addition, where we do have some dormers up in the second floor, because all of the second floor is sort of within the roof. It's not a full second floor. So we have dormers there that have sort of very flat standing seam metal roofs on them in zinc-coated copper. go to the rear, the water side, this is the No, I can't find my rear elevation. But this is the, this area here is the area where that octagonal addition is, and where we were replacing the roof with a form that's more compatible with the existing, the hip sort of gable form with a bay window out towards the water. Between those two structures, there's an existing roof deck, which are roof structure for a porch, which we're proposing to rebuild. It doesn't really get any bigger except on its, in this section here. It moves a little bit toward the north. Oh, here's the rear. So that exists here, and it extends now from there to here, which is this part here. And at the moment, there's a dormer window here, and you can get out onto there, but David would like to be able to utilize that as a roof deck. So we're proposing to do a structure here where this dormer is that would allow you to get out onto that roof deck. And then on top of that, there would be a flat roof that would create another roof deck at the higher level. So there are stairs up from roof deck to roof deck there. This element here is a turret that allows you to get onto that upper roof deck, which actually has, it's a very small massing. It just has an elevator and basically a little vestibule that you can step out onto, and that's a side view of it there, the water view of it there. Over here on the more north end is where the screen porch is, which is just a one-story addition with a standing seam metal roof on it. So basically, the materials, we're just going to be using the same materials that are here, the stucco, wood windows, basically the colors that we've got. The only change materially that we'd like to do is change the wood cedar shingle roof to a slate roof. This is the northern elevation, which is the most changed elevation, where we get the garage doors. And above that, on the second level, there are dormer windows, again, in that roof to give us space on that second floor. And again, they're the same sort of dormers with fairly flat roofs on them and standing seam metal roofs. And then there's, in this area, there's a porch that brings you into the kitchen. So I also gave you sort of a colored rendering. Your colors turned out a little pink, but it's basically very beige, so this gives you a concept of, you know, the gray shingle roof and this sort of beige stucco with the white trim. The front, the street side, the south side.
What was the slate?
The slate is gray. And it actually matches the slate on the roof of a cottage on the site. There's a pre-existing cottage on the site that's probably left over from the old estate. And it has a slate roof on it, like this.
The railings have a considerable amount of decking,
Yes.
specifically on the rear. So that's going to be, the example you're giving here Unfortunately, I think your coloring is just not coming through. Your pink house is not showing the railing. So it's going to be cedar, it's going to be darker. Do you have a sample?
You mean the railing itself?
Railing, and then you also have an exterior stairway going up to
Right, at the moment, all of that is proposed just to be painted white.
painted white.
Yes, it's mostly made, we're trying to use a lot of Versatex and materials like that here that are very weather resistant, because the house does get a lot of weather from the, because it's so close to the ocean. So they would be, balusters and railings of Versatex painted white. So all of that system would be white.
House sits back approximately how far from First Night?
It's the other thing, yes, it's way back from if you go there, you can't really see the house at all. That's the right way. First Neck is out here.
470?
Between 500 and 470.
470.
Yeah. So the site is all hedged. These photos are just to give you an idea of what the site looks like. It's basically hedged. On the north side, the hedge is a little bit taller, and it sort of ranges from 15 to 18 feet. On the south side, it's 12 to 13 feet. There's a hedge on the street side, so you can't really see this house at all. The applicant also The other thing about the roof deck is that it's in the middle, and I did talk to the building inspector about this. It's between these two ridges, so it's not visible from the front and really hard to see even from the sides. It's really only visible from the rear of the property.
My challenge is not the neighbors seeing your...
No, right. But when you're up here, you also, looking this way, you don't have much of a view because of the impact of the ridge here, because the deck is way down here, so your head would be up in here. The only view you really have is this way, but you do also have the challenge of this ridge here. So it's because here's the floor of the roof deck, and your head is really probably about up here. So it's not also like you can, with the distance and the hedges, also it's not like you can peer down into the neighbor's property.
That elevation is the one facing Lake Avenue.
Yes. And this is really the only elevation that's visible.
Okay, this one.
As a public view, and only from across the lake.
Jeff, any other comments?
Well, in fact, you just segued into my concern, and, I mean, the way the property is situated, it's almost buried in a little bit, so it's not 100% visible like some of the others, like the
Right.
Scarborough property is
Yes.
very visible, Makamonto is very visible, this is a little bit less so, it's a little bit more hidden. And I would like to ask Brian what his thought of all those windows looking out onto Lake Agawam and the third floor deck looking out to Lake Agawam. And at some point, I'd like to walk the property because I've only, looked at it from the other side of Gin Lane.
Right.
And I'm not 100% comfortable that that may work, but on the other hand, it may not be all that visible. But architecturally, Brian, do you have
I
a...
think, first of all, it's a huge improvement to the house that's there. And I don't have a problem with that facade. If you think about how it's all stepping back, and
Yeah, this
there's
is bad.
trellising over the new bay window, and there's screen porch. I mean, there's a lot of juxtaposition
Yeah.
and a lot of things
Yeah.
going on. I think
Yeah.
it's great. And you want to see that view. You want to see the lake. So I don't have an issue with the third floor deck either.
What about the exterior stairway and all the lattices going up to the second story?
No, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Christine?
I have no problem with it.
I have no objection. It's really
tucked.
quite hidden.
It's
It's
tucked
weird.
back, yeah.
It's almost like,
It's a very hidden
because those other
house.
ones sit way out, and then this thing, you hardly know.
It's also actually up on a rise. I mean, when you go to the property,
But there's a little indentation for some,
Yeah.
it's like a cove. I
it's like a
don't know.
cove,
I
yeah.
once saw a muskrat go across that cove. It's very cool.
You would think
So
that it would be more
I have no
visible.
objection, and I think you have every right to look at the Lake Agawam.
Anything happening to the other building, the other?
No.
That's
The
same
only things that are in the permit would be the swimming pool and
not
these
interesting.
additions.
That's not
Right, yeah. But that's it. No, the other building is just fine.
Is there any public comment on the application? Zach, I didn't make any comments, or I look for some comments from you. It's in a historic district. It is a important section of the historic district.
Even though it's not a historic building, it has some charm to it. But I agree with Brian that these improvements kind of make it more rational and kind of in the spirit of just enlarging but not disguising what's there. I think that the design is wonderful, and I think the outcome is an improvement upon the other. So I think it's...
Seems to be no objection to the board. Our historic consultant also doesn't feel that it's out of keeping, and it's well within, I guess, the allowable within the historic district, and therefore, in any property or any parcel that's in the historic district requires written decision. We'll close the application for this evening for written decision by council, which will be prepared at our next meeting. Any questions?
No.
Motion to close for written decision by council.
Make a motion that we close the application of David Bond Living Trust at 484 Cosneck Lane for a written decision by our council.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Those are historic applications for this evening. First application, non-historic.
First application on Goldstein.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, line of sight on the...
Line of sight.
Good evening. For the applicant, John David Rose, located at 596 Hampton Road. You recall that at the last meeting, we discussed the architecture, but specifically there was some question about a second floor deck. You asked that we show the hedge, the height of the hedge, how it relates to a person, and a perspective. And this one here, I've drawn the people in pink. And you had asked about the height of the hedge, and I knew it was tall, but I wasn't exactly sure. That's what I wanted to get back to. It's 13 feet. A hedge like this grows a foot a year. The client owns it, and they maintain it at 13, but they're very comfortable at it going up to 20 feet. But quite frankly, if you look at this elevation of the side, and this is also in your file here, You'll see that this person has no view. That would be the view right there. You could barely see the ridge of the neighboring home. And when you're on the neighboring property looking back at our house, you can't see the deck. You can only see the very top of our house.
Last meeting, there was a question about the height of the hedging and how that would impact the line of sight. I went to see the file this afternoon. I think you answered the question in detail. I no longer have any questions with regards to the line of sight. There were no questions or issues or concerns about the architecture at the last meeting. Anything further from the board? Is there any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
Evelyn Conrad, 18 South Roscoe Drive. Good evening.
Good evening.
There is a little bit of a legal problem about this application. It has not been properly noticed. I own property at 18 South Roscoe Drive. My deed is 1984, and as your attorney could tell you, every owner in a subdivision, mine is a supposedly legally 67-lot subdivision, has the right to enforce deed rights and common plan and scheme against any other owner. I have not been notified, and if the practice that has been prevalent about my subdivision has been going on, then there are an awful lot of other properties that you made decisions on at meetings that were not proper because the application, the public hearing was not properly notified. Now, I'm here by sheer accident. I had a lot of kids visiting this summer. It was a delight. I was very happy to ship the last one off on the train this morning, and rather than having Blue Monday, I came to this meeting, and lo and behold, there around the corner from me is an application. I also had the dim rumor come to me that there is a ZBA application about another property in my subdivision, about which I was also not notified. Now, I'm talking about me, but this is true about approximately 40 other owners in the area. I can't give you the exact count, but it's numerous. And it is a legal problem. Sorry, I know legal problems are not your purview, but I know you're concerned about this.
Well, as it relates to the posting and mailing,
I beg your pardon?
As it relates to the posting and mailing, it was supplied and filed a copy of not only
I'm
the
not on it,
affidavit
yes.
but also the
It's a
list of...
67-lot subdivision.
Okay, I'm just basing this on administratively what the building department has...
You couldn't know.
Okay.
I'm sure if you have your attorney review this, and after all, it's the building department, for which he's also the attorney, that makes up these mailing lists, so it should not be that difficult for him to tell you what is illegal and complete.
I told you I'm the attorney for the building department.
Aren't you? Well, then you're not. Someone must be, because they're providing these lists.
You seem to be misinformed.
Oh, please, I'm sure I am, and so I apologize. I know you've been misinformed about 7 South Roscoe Drive also in my neighborhood, which your decision that you voted on called adjacent to and not part of the subdivision. The documents are all there. So we have a problem. What will you do? I'd like to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I?
No. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, for purposes of this particular process in this board, we have received a copy of the affidavit of posting and mailing, as well as, and from an administrative standpoint, it has been documented and identified that this, now we have standing to review because we do have the affidavit of mailing.
I have standing to make the protest I'm making.
Absolutely.
And you're dealing with an illegal application at this point.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything further? Any other public comment? Anything further from board? Okay, there's no opposition of the application itself. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the application of William and Alyssa Goldstein at 10 Johnny Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next application is Emanon South Corporation.
Other way.
Last meeting, we had a question about the affidavit posting and mailing, improperly noticed.
Which one is?
And I'm in receipt of those affidavits, so therefore we can move forward. Brian, comments?
I think that the house is fine as long as what you're building is what's in the architectural plans, and that the rendering is not really
No.
a good representation of that. Because the scale of your windows and dormers and the porch and everything is much more appropriate on the architectural plans than it is on here.
Right.
Christine?
Yes, I mean,
I don't
I'm
have any
confused by the difference between these two things. And this,
Take this.
Yeah, throw that away.
Put it.
get rid of that.
All right. Susan?
I don't have any objection.
Jeff?
Not generally, but I mean, I find it a rather boxy look, and maybe that's the way obviously it's been designed to max out the envelope and everything else, and that's what it is. I understand. Is there a more creative way to add a little bit more character? When I drove down, I think, is it Bernadine and certain of the houses on Corrigan, there just seems to be more character in some of those houses than I see on this plan. But, Brian, am I missing something, or is there a way to make it more?
For this style of house, less character is better. Seriously, I mean, he's got some, bay windows up above, and he's got a nice shed dormer. It's just not overblown in any way.
Are you sticking with the black trim around the windows?
White
Stick with the
house?
White
Yes.
House?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the roof-
Simple is better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've had designs before come, and
I cringe when I go down Corrigan.
Yeah.
I live there. So it's just-
Michael, what's the roof material?
It's going to be a cedar roof.
Oh, it doesn't look like that in here.
Yeah, it looks like a,
Well, they don't,
Say that on the drawing.
the guy that does,
I have
it
no
says it
idea.
on the drawing, but
It's
that
so
did the
tiny.
rendering. I don't think he knew how to
Okay.
put a cedar sheet.
You need a new CAD guy, or, what is
A
this?
couple more hours.
This is this rivet?
Yeah, I
Yeah, you need a
believe
new guy.
it needs a couple more hours.
All right, any public comment on the application? Okay, see if anyone else.
There's nobody.
Good job.
Thank you. Thanks.
Motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the application of Enron South Corporation on 191 Bishop's Lane.
Second?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Wait, this is from David Rose.
Yes, because of the crowd. No, no.
Hold on.
This goes in from David Rose.
Okay, our last application for the evening?
No, the second to last, we need the DVs.
CPB Southampton LLC?
Just received, gave us a posting and mailing.
Look at this here all the way around.
It's Eric Dantes for the applicant, 500 Crownland Lane, Cutchogue, New York. This application is not in the historic district, however, my client likes old houses, so she designed it to be a shingle-style white farmhouse, cedar roof, white painted brick chimney, white shutters, white 6/6 double-hung windows. House conforms to size. It has a code-conforming front, rear yard, and side yard setbacks, and it has a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the non-conforming front yard setbacks.
It's been granted?
That's been granted. It's in your file, and I can give you another copy if you'd like one. The height of the house is a conforming 28 feet 6 inches, which is below the minimum 30 feet height. The house is about 2,500 square feet in size, and that does not include the finished cellar. And separating the property from the nearest neighbor is a large privet hedge that's mature and exists. Pass a picture up if you'd like it. House has a rear covered porch and a wooden front door. So, proposed on the street sides is an Aphrodite hedge, which will be new. The old existing hedge and fence is ratty, and it's not even on the applicant's property. It's on the town's property, so we'll pull that out and put a new Aphrodite hedge on the applicant's property to screen the parking court and the rear yard. Other than that, she designed it to be historic in nature and to be part of the village's historic character, and just a basic farmhouse. And
Zach is not in the historic district, however, it is a very sensitive and located adjacent to.
It's directly behind 70 Hills, it's kind of tucked away. This property, actually, the existing house required a review on my part because there was a question as to its age, and it didn't really meet the age criteria. So although it was a older cottage. I just want to express briefly a kind of a philosophical issue. If this were being proposed in a more visible place in the village, such as Job's Lane or South Main Street, I would suggest that you would have serious issues simply because this attempts to replicate a historical structure, and that's not something that's desirable in the historic district. And so philosophically, that would be a problem, because all sorts of detailing that isn't up to snuff would come into question. The scale of the front doorway is very odd. I'm just looking at the design. But that's moot because this is tucked away on South Hill Street, South Hill, and it's not in the historic district, and it's out of sight, and it is not in the context of other historic buildings. So visually, I think the experience of seeing this as one drives down the street, it will not present any confusion because no one would mistake this. This is not shingle style. This is a faux Greek revival style house. Just to be precise, and by the very fact of where it is proposed to be built, it is not a historical location, and therefore there wouldn't be any confusion. But I just point that out because there is this interesting tendency to want to blend with historical buildings in a historic kind of village such as this, and that can present its own sorts of challenges if someone tries to replicate an old building, which is not generally recommended. So, in short, I have no objection for those reasons.
Ryan, comments?
Just some little nitpicky things. I think your CAD is a little off. You're missing the moldings in the gables. And
I just assumed they didn't want to have them.
yeah, well,
I don't know.
the front
There's no
entrance,
e-board
the
there.
front entrance, I would love to see the proportion of that worked out a little bit better. The pilasters on the side of the front doors are much too wide for that door, and I don't think dental molding's appropriate there. And on the rear, you have your shutters, you either do them or you don't, and I would suggest you don't.
Which elevation or?
Okay, so if you go to the south elevation, you see the second story where there's missing.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Yep.
So all the attic level gable walls are lacking
Dental.
boards, eaves, boards, and dental molding, which would be consistent with the base of the roofs wherever the roof comes to a level. That's a choice. Again, this is not, intending to be an accurate reconstruction of a period Greek revival house. It's just using those elements in the new construction. So, but yeah, the front doorway, there are hundreds of wonderful examples, both photographic and drawn, that the client gives detail herself of to get that better. But again, it will be new, so.
Jeff, any comments?
No, I think Brian and Zach, comments and observations were excellent.
Susan, any comments?
No.
Christine?
No, I mean, the south elevation, the shutters are scary. I would not have them.
An awful lot.
On the north elevation, the door seems so imposing and out of scale that it needs to be simplified and
On the south elevation, and I don't know if this is just a little thing, right behind the post, it just seems, is that a window behind there?
South elevation behind the
That's
post.
the back wall. Yeah.
A202.
You go for
Back wall. Yeah, the
That's
back
the
wall.
back of
Yeah, the
the
south.
Yeah, let me go to the big drawing.
It's a shutter. It's one of the
It's a shutter.
shutters on the side.
The shutters
and it's the edge of the shutter.
Even right next to the, see it here? Have a shadow?
Yeah, that's from the
Those are
side.
shutters.
On the side.
No, on both of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it needs a little rework.
Yeah.
So Brian, you know, there are a lot of shutters on this thing.
Well, that
On
one,
or off? I couldn't propose, I don't know how
No,
somebody
on the facade that it's on.
The
I mean,
front?
the front should definitely have them.
Okay.
You know, the entrance just needs to be
Yeah,
toned
I
down.
see you.
You know, it
Then-
needs some moldings
Yeah.
in the eaves.
And then the back is plain. You can see this house, well, you can drive,
back.
it is exposed in an odd way.
It's a corner.
Yeah, it's a big corner.
Brian, on the
So
east,
that, I don't know what,
so did you get all that information?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Okay.
Brian,
I can tell you, take the shutters off the back, and, yeah, I can't argue with
South
you there.
elevation,
South elevation.
put the shutters.
Make the front door is fine, but make the moldings or the columns, whatever you call them, smaller and just
Reduce
make
them.
it square. Yep, okay.
so the
And
door, does the door need to get bigger and the columns need to get smaller?
Not just the columns.
Just the columns.
The door,
Okay.
you know,
Brian, what's your thought on the east elevation, the half windows? Second floor?
I don't mind this.
No, I don't mind those.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, so you got the information in detail?
I got, wait, so add moldings to the attic gables. Make the front doorway pillars smaller and square. And remove the rear shutters from the, I guess it's the south elevation. That's it. That's all.
Do you have anything else? What is the material of the roof? I see it.
And white painted brick chimney.
Brick chimney, painted white brick.
Anything further from the board? Zach, any questions? Any public comment? So you'll come back at the next meeting and make some of the changes or adjustments that are suggested? And you're asking the board to adjourn so that you can prepare yourself?
I'd like to request to the board to adjourn to the September 11th meeting so I can submit and hopefully a final submission.
Excellent. It would be helpful to have those plans in early.
I'll try to get it done this week, or I don't deal with it. I'll try to get the architect to do it this week.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot.
Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until our next meeting.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant DPB Southampton LLC on South Hill Street request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now our final application for the evening.
Fred Dodds for a garage.
I think my application plan is what we've had tonight, but I think it'll be a nice garage. I'm the owner, Fred Dodds.
Sorry, your name? Your name?
Fred Dodds.
Surprise, surprise.
Well, it's basically going to be a one-car garage attached to the side of the house. There are a couple other units in the development. The houses are exactly like mine, and they have the same type of garage. The contour of the garage matches the house. It'll be the same roof. It'll be the cedar shakes, just like the house has. Any technical questions, I have my contractor here.
What is the garage door material? The garage door?
It's going to be a wood door.
Your name for the
I think
record,
that's
sir.
required by the...
Your name for the record?
Frank Beta from Beta Brothers, BETA Brothers.
Okay.
So it's a wood door.
Yeah, it'd be a wood door. I think that's what's required, right?
Not necessarily.
Because normally we
It could be a Versatech or, AZAC or,
I'll be happy with wood. Wood's fine.
Any other questions?
no?
Christine?
No.
Jeff?
Yep.
Susan? No. Zach? I have no objection as well. Motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the application of Fred Dodds on Meadowgrass for his garage.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right, we have left over are the minutes from August 14th. I believe all the members of the board were here. I'm sorry, I wasn't here. Okay. Board members had the opportunity to review the minutes.
Yes.
Questions, comments, concerns, errors, or omissions?
No.
Motion to approve the minutes
Make a
from,
motion that we approve the minutes from August 14th, 2017.
I second the motion.
all in favor? Aye. And motion to close this evening's meeting. Before we do so, I just want to make, just as a comment, have our thoughts and our prayers out to those that are out in Houston and for what's going on. It's a troubling and trying situation for all, and we should always be mindful of those that are least and less fortunate. So with that said, motion to close this evening's meeting.
Make a motion that we close this meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation on August 28th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, gang.